Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In continuing our discussion of legalism, I want in this video to talk about the consequences of legalism in our lives as Christians. And we talked in the last video about what legalism really is, and that's basically trying to save ourselves based on our own good deeds, based on the works of keeping God's law, basically trying to earn or become deserving of heaven by keeping God's law. And that's just not possible at this point, at least, because all of us have broken God's law, and all of us need Jesus Christ to save us. So essentially, legalism means, if you really boil it all down, that we're relying on ourselves. We're trusting in ourselves to be righteous enough to go to heaven, instead of trusting in Jesus, whose sacrifice and has given us the opportunity to be righteous if we will be, believe in Him and be baptized into Him and be forgiven and become righteous based on that offer. So let me tell you the practical effects that legalism has on our lives, and their negative effects, because trusting in ourselves basically leads us to two ends of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, it can lead to arrogance if we trust in ourselves. Look in Luke chapter 18. In Luke 18, Jesus tells a parable of a Pharisee and a publican, or a tax collector, and he tells this because he's trying to show what a legalist looks like. He's trying to show what happens when we trust in our own righteousness and how we relate to God and to other people based on that. Look in Luke 18 verse 9, and he also told this parable to some people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. And the Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. And I tell you, this man went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Here, the Pharisee, because he trusted in himself that he was good enough to be righteous, he became arrogant against other people who didn't measure up to his standard. He looked at himself as the standard for righteousness. He said, listen, he goes down the checklist, right? I give tithes of all that I get. I'm fasting twice a week. God, I'm so thankful that I'm not out there committing murder, and I'm not out there stealing like all those other people. Look how righteous, look how great I am. Which is just absolutely absurd, because that Pharisee is guilty of so many other sins, but what he's doing is he's picking and choosing and setting himself up as a standard for what righteousness is. That's one side effect of legalism, is this attitude that God is going to somehow owe me heaven, that I'm going to be deserving of it because I'm just great, and I'm going to show God how righteous I am, and everyone else who's not like me, well, they're just lost and they're worthless, and God shouldn't care a thing about them. That's one end of the spectrum. But the other end of the spectrum is quite the opposite, and that is fear. Fear. Fear of not making it to heaven. Listen, if I have to trust in myself to be righteous in order to get to heaven, how in the world am I ever going to get there? Because listen, I look in my own life and I see the sins that I've committed, and listen, I've got a lot more bad deeds, it seems, than I do good ones. So how in the world can I ever be good enough to be in heaven? And this is exactly the thing that we need to avoid, because Jesus says you're right. You absolutely are not good enough to go to heaven. That's the point. Nobody is. Which is why Jesus came to die for us, to give us that hope that even though we are sinners, even though we are enemies of God, we have the opportunity to be in heaven. And those are really the two dangers of legalism. And I'm sure there are other dangers, but those are the main ones. And I'll just make a quick statement about the religion of Islam, because what they have essentially done is set up a system of legalism where in order for them to get to heaven or paradise, they have to have more good deeds, or hasana'at, or that outweigh their bad deeds, or sayya'at. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Sayya'at. Okay, the good deeds have to outweigh their bad deeds, and that's a legalistic system, and that doesn't provide much hope. I hope that that's helpful and clear, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.